What's up, Star Wars fans? This video is all about how a character with a few seconds of screen time ended up being one of the most important in the galaxy. We don't know much about her early life, but Depa Billaba was a human female born on the planet Chalakta some decades before the Clone Wars. She had a sister, Sar Laboda, and as a child, she was held captive by space pirates. These pirates ended up killing Depa Billaba's parents before she was rescued by Mace Windu, who quickly recognized her sensitivity to the Force. Windu would take Depa Billaba into the Jedi Order and raise her as his Padawan, training her in the skills of the Force. Mace Windu being one of the most notable lightsaber duelists in the galaxy, it's no surprise that Depa Billaba quickly became renowned for her own skills with the lightsaber. Her favorite form was Form 3, which we see her teaching her Padawan Kanan Jarrus in the future. More on that later. There's a pretty big gap in the history of Depa Billaba, but eventually she gains her seat on the Jedi High Council, serving right alongside Master Windu. In one of the few clips we actually get to see of Depa Billaba, she is either being concerned over the return of the Sith, or doubting Qui-Gon's whole story about the Chosen One. If that look was her doubting the return of the Sith, it's pretty ironic since the next time we see her, she is at Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral after being killed by Darth Maul. In the massive Colosseum battle on Geonosis, which would mark the beginning of the Clone Wars, we get to see Depa Billaba again, and her sister Labuda, who quickly dies in the firefight. Like the other more famous members of the Jedi High Council, Depa Billaba also becomes a general during the Clone Wars. At some point, her and her troops face General Grievous. It was on Harun Kal that the four-armed cyborg and his droid army inflicted 90% casualties on the Jedi Master's battalion. Depa Billaba herself was badly injured and fell into a coma. Depa Billaba is somehow rescued and returned to the Jedi Temple, where she attempts to heal in a bacta tank. It's while floating in this bacta bath that Caleb Dume, who would eventually become Kanan Jarrus, first lays eyes on his future master, Depa Billaba, and immediately feels a strong connection with the Force and wants to know more about her. Apparently, Depa Billaba must have felt this connection to the Force as well, even while in a bacta-induced sleep, because she immediately wakes up and starts banging on the glass. Although Billaba appears to have made a full physical recovery, we are shown that Mace Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan Kenobi are all worried that her mental state may not be fully recovered. Billaba tries to shrug off the other Jedi Master's worry by joking nothing like spending 6 months in a coma to give one time to relax. But Mace Windu and Yoda are kind of upset at her for joking around about something that's so serious, saying that's not exactly an attractive quality in a Jedi. Obi-Wan, though, awesome as always, says, "I'm just happy you're awake and alive." Sadly, we see Yoda and Mace Windu off to the side, discussing that they're still worried that maybe she should be tested, have a full fitness assessment, physical, emotional, and mental. The Council puts Billaba through these tests to make sure that she's fit. She passes, of course, and she starts to take an interest in the youngling Caleb Dume. What Billaba loves about Caleb Dume is his fearlessness and curiosity. In the comic, we get to see Caleb Dume ask a perfectly legitimate question about the history of the Jedi Order, specifically how do Jedi Knights pick their Padawans and why is that method the one that they've stuck with for hundreds of years. And everybody kind of gives him shit for it. His fellow younglings, the teacher, and Mace Windu all look down on him for asking a teacher a perfectly legitimate question. Billaba loves it, however, and starts to pay closer attention to young Caleb Dume. Next, we see Master Billaba personally training Caleb Dume and his two friends Samo Quid and Tyazuma, all three who have recently just passed their initiate trials. She's training them in Form 3, which is Billaba's preferred fighting style, which clearly must resonate with Caleb Dume, who is able to quickly destroy a training remote. After this, Caleb looks into it and sees that Master Billaba has no Padawan. He talks about it with his friends, who all laugh at him, calling him a kid, and saying why would she ever choose him. To make it more complicated, Samo Quid finds out about the 90% casualties that Billaba suffered and the fact that she was sent into a coma from General Grievous. All of this worries his two youngling friends, it also troubles Caleb Dume, who wonders if teaming up with Master Billaba is a good move. Believe it or not, Caleb Dume just goes up to Master Billaba and straight up asks her, "Are you damaged goods?" She comments this isn't a very tactful question, but perhaps a wise one if they plan on teaming up, and she concedes that maybe she is damaged goods. Billaba tells Caleb that although she's fully recovered physically, so many good men died under her service that she fears that it will ever happen again. Obviously, fear not being an emotion that a Master Jedi should be feeling. She comments that this fear can make her leadership in the battlefield suspect. A bonding opportunity is presented to the pair in the form of a suicide-bombing ninja sent by General Cleave with plans on destroying the main tower of the Jedi Temple. The ninja bomber chucks a couple mini-drone explosives down a hallway, which almost takes out Caleb Dume and Master Billaba. In the seconds after this explosion, we get to see just how unsure Depa Billaba is in her abilities. She tells Caleb that she could easily become a liability out there, perhaps implying that she might be captured or not able to stand up to whoever the attackers are. Caleb kind of tells Billaba to stop the pity party and basically get moving because they know that the attacker is only one floor above them, having just heard him in the air ducts, and that because he put so many explosives on the bottom floors, that would occupy all the temple guards and other Jedi. It was up to them to stop this guy. Caleb doesn't wait for Billaba, instead rushes onto the roof and catches the bomber as he's placing a detonator upon the main tower. This forces the ninja to divert his attention from the bomb and instead chuck a few mini-drones at Caleb. These precious few seconds allow Depa Billaba to arrive and initiate badass mode. Her lightsaber now activated and surrounded by a bunch of flames in the background, she demands that the bomber step away from the boy. The ninja bomber then talks some crap about Jedi, pulls out another explosive, and throws it right at Caleb Dume. In an instant, Bilaba's abilities with the Force are so strong that she's able to see inside the explosive, understand that it works by combining two chemicals together, creating a chain reaction, and using the Force to also keep those two liquids separate from each other until she's able to rip the detonator on the main tower, pull it towards her, and have it intersect with the grenade intended for Caleb Dume. This ends the threat to the Jedi Temple, and Billaba, raising her lightsaber, offers the ninja mercy. Being a good ninja suicide bomber, he declines the mercy and instead runs and jumps off of the Jedi Temple. Billaba calls on Caleb to help him, and together they're able to use the Force to suspend the bomber in midair, hovering over the edge. At that point, the ninja bomber takes out a handful of mini-drone bombs and asks, "I wonder how many things a Jedi can do at once." Seeing that the man's fate was sealed, Billaba grabs Caleb, tells him to run, and they avoid the ensuing explosion. Exhausted and laying upon the roof of the Jedi Temple, Billaba, staring up, says that perhaps she will need a Padawan if she is to continue her journey. She remarks that normally Caleb Dume would be too young to become a Padawan, but that the trials of the Clone Wars would require his service. Caleb is of course ecstatic about his promotion, and Master Billaba and her new Padawan head out to the planet Cardoa for her first mission since recovery. Billaba and Caleb get to talking with their troops, and it's through Canon that we find out that it's a recon mission that they're on, and through Billaba we learn that she still deeply regrets what happened on her last deployment. And, interestingly, that it must have been 40 men in the last battalion, because there's 4 men left speaking with her, and they comment that they're the only ones left, and she lost 90% of her original battalion. 10% of 40 is 4. So, a very small battalion. I just wanted to point that out because in the beginning of the comic, they make it seem like maybe she's a bad commander and she doubts herself, or a bad general, but it's not that shocking that General Grievous, with a bunch of droids, could ambush and kill off 38 guys. It's not that crazy. But anyway, back to the story. The next morning, Billaba and the troops head out, exploring a cavern on their way to trying to discover if there is a separatist presence on the planet. The troops wind their way down a steep cliffside path, so narrow that they have to walk 2 by 2. Unknown to the group, their movements in the cavern are being tracked by a droid, which is relaying the data to a bunch of other droids that are laying in wait. Right before the explosion that would cut her off from the troops, Billaba senses a disturbance in the Force and warns her Padawan, who both activate their lightsabers. Depa Billaba and her Padawan, along with a few clone troops, are now cut off from the majority of their forces. Although caught off guard, Caleb is nonetheless exhilarated at his first opportunity to real fighting. He throws himself at the laser bolts and starts deflecting them back at his droid enemies. Billaba is impressed, and she leaves her Padawan to fight off the first wave of droids, while she and a few clone troopers try and figure out where they're coming from. But as she makes her way down a separate mountain path, she senses a disturbance in the Force. Caleb has been shot and is laying unconscious on the ground. But luckily, Billaba and her troops end up finding the ship belonging to the droids' commanders. When they start firing on it, their commander has to leave, abandoning all of the Separatist forces on the planet. Caleb is rescued by a clone trooper and forced to spend some time in a bacta tank. With their mission successful, the pair head off to their next assignment on Megiddo. Megiddo starts out pretty simple. It's just the pair going around with their clone troopers, taking out as many droids as they can, trying to clear out all the Separatist forces from Megiddo, one plateau at a time. At one point in the fighting, Billaba loses her Jedi robes and says that loss is inevitable. That for Caleb, he too will have to face some sort of inevitable and very painful loss. But the pain of this loss cannot take him out of his responsibilities that he has to some higher purpose. Seconds after this, droid artillery fire rains in from a distance, taking out the walkways that connect the mesa that they're on from all the other troops. Billaba and Caleb are stranded on this platform with only two other clone troopers, and are left to face hundreds of zombie-like droids that are climbing over the edge of the platform. We get to see some really impressive force push from both Billaba and Caleb, who are hurling dozens of droids off the platform at a time. Luckily, Billaba gets a call from Skull Squadron, a group of Mandalorian pilots who are aligned with the Republic. How cool is that? These good Mandalorians end up swooping in, blasting all the droids to pieces, and saving the day. Billaba and Canon are rescued, and as they're returning back to their base, Billaba feels like she has seen this kind of tactics before. As the crew lands at their home base, Caleb remarks that it's kind of like a ghost town since all the other troops are out fighting all the droids, which, of course, is where they get sneak attacked again. Another cage warrior, like the suicide ninja bomber from the Jedi Temple, hovers over Caleb and his fallen comrade. Billaba starts to rush towards Caleb when she hears the metallic voice of an old foe. General Grievous has appeared and ignited his 4 lightsabers. Caleb is forced to take on the cage warrior, while Billaba is left alone to fight off the 4-armed Grievous. An intense battle ensues, but Billaba is able to hold her own. Parrying each blade and using force pushes, he is eventually able to time in a perfect strike, severing 2 of Grievous's arms. An instant later, however, Grievous is able to land a glancing blow on her back. Caleb dispatches the cage warrior, and clone troopers arrive to aid her. Grievous realizes he is now outgunned and flees the battle. Though Grievous survived, their mission is complete, and our Jedi pair leave Megiddo. Upon a Republic cruiser, Depa Billaba receives back-to-tank treatment for her injuries. The next time we see our Jedi pair is a few months later, in the thick of the battle on the planet Kalair. Billaba and her battalion make quick work of the Separatist forces defending General Cleve. The Separatist leader realizes that the battle is lost and flees before capture. For the first time, we get to see Billaba as a peacekeeper and diplomat as she meets with the leader Gamut Key to discuss how things will be different now that the Separatists have been pushed off the planet. He expresses that he's not too excited about his newfound freedom and worries that he will simply have to provide supplies and resources for the clone troopers instead of the Separatists. Billaba reassures him that things will be different and that her and her clone troopers can set up camp outside of the city. With the fighting done for now, Billaba is able to focus on actually training Caleb in some of the ways of the Jedi. They practice some Form 3, and get talking about Caleb finding his place in the galaxy. He expresses that he's never been happier when he's fighting on the battlefield, but Billaba reminds him that Jedi will not always be warriors, and that as the times change, so must the Jedi. Later, Caleb brings up another thing that was bothering him. Why was it that Billaba let the Kalaran disrespect her earlier? Billaba reminds him that their actions will prove themselves better than the Separatists. but mentions this is only part of the reason why she didn't reprimand them. But Billaba goes on to say that she agrees with the Kalaren in part that the Jedi should not be involved in military action. Her clone troopers try to back her up and say that the Jedi have helped out the clones immensely and that they wouldn't be where they are today without her leadership. But she tries to remind them that that doesn't matter. The role of the Jedi is not a general. Her clone troopers say that they mean no disrespect, but they have to insist that she is wrong on this. And Caleb is stunned that these clone troopers would be defying Billaba like this. And in a really cool callback, she brings up that Caleb was infamous at the Jedi Temple for questioning authority. And that's what she loved about him so much. In a really cool callback to her conversation with Yoda after just leaving her bacta tank in the first battle with Grievous, she teases Caleb and says, "Perhaps I was being glib, and perhaps that's not the most attractive quality in a Jedi." She reminds Caleb that questioning authority is what drew her to him, and this is where she gives him her holocron and tells him that he must study how to peacefully dissent with the Jedi Order. The two clone troopers sitting with them listening to this conversation are original troopers from her first deployment. They start ragging on Caleb and pointing out that he must have been some troublemaker and calling him kid, which obviously upsets him. And the atmosphere is pretty relaxed and comical around the campfire. As the group is laughing, Commander Styles gets an alert. Walks away from the group to receive a communication. The hologram of a black hooded figure appears and tells the commander to execute Order 66. Sensing a disturbance in the Force, Billaba snatches Caleb's arm. As she grabs him, he too feels the disturbance, sensing and seeing images from across the galaxy of Jedi being attacked by their own clone troopers. As Billaba and Kanan look up, their friends, only seconds ago laughing with them, now have their blasters raised. Caleb is rendered immobile, but Billaba doesn't miss a second. She activates her lightsaber and starts deflecting laser bolts. The two clone troopers nearest lose their heads, while Kanan is stunned. "Run or fight, but do not stand there," Billaba screams. Caleb snaps into focus, activating his lightsaber, and deflects two laser bolts into clones that he called friends. The Jedi pair work their way through the battalion, killing many clones, but Billaba realizes that they are just too outnumbered. He tells her Padawan that they cannot win this battle, and insists that he runs away. She says that she will be right behind him, and Caleb knows that she's lying. Padawan dashes up the cliffside, and out of the corner of her eye she sees one of her most beloved clone troopers about to take a shot at Caleb. She lowers her guard and focuses all of her attention on a forced push. But leaving herself vulnerable, she is shot several times in the back. The lightsaber leaves her hands, and Master Billaba falls to the ground. The clone troopers don't miss a beat, swarming her and pumping extra laser bolts into her dead body. Caleb turns around just in time to witness the horrific scene. He is traumatized, but alive. Jedi Master Depa Billaba's story ends here, but her legacy continues in her Padawan, Caleb Dume. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so I can bring you even more super detailed life stories of obscure characters.